Okay, so we're live now.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about porting an Alexa skill to Bixby. This is the Bixby office hours. We'll have show a video about that, and then we'll have about half an hour of Q&A time. Some quick introductions. My name is Roger Kibbe. At Roger Kibbe is my Twitter handle. I'm a senior developer evangelist for Viv Labs, really the brains behind Bixby. A couple personal things. I am a father of two daughters. Two teen daughters, and I'm a UC Berkeley graduate, so I was going to say go Bears. And John, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name's Jonathan Pan. I'm a technical evangelist for Bixby as well, and I have four too many cats. And yes, that's about it.
All right, so we're gonna start a video in just a minute or two. I'm going to tell you the video is slightly rough. We're going to create a tutorial out of this. So bear with us. There's a couple errors in it. Bonus if you find an error. But while we're playing the video, go ahead and ask your questions on YouTube Live. And we will be, both Jonathan and me will be answering them. And then after the video plays, we'll open it up. And for questions, anything about what you saw in the video, or any questions in general about Alexa development. And with that, I'm going to ask Jonathan if he can start the video.
All right, we'll do.
Hi, I'm going to tell you how to port an Alexa skill over to a Bixby Capsule. My name is Roger Kibbe. I'm a senior developer evangelist for Viv Labs, and we are really the engineering brains behind Bixby, Samsung's voice assistant. My Twitter handle is at Roger Kibbe. Let's get started. So what skill did I decide to port over? The pet match skill. I have the GitHub repo up there for the Alexa version of pet match. And then I have the repo for the port over to Bixby. Notice you have to look in the direct port directory. Soon I will have added a Bixby enhanced version of pet match to a different directory. So why pet match? One, it's a pretty darn popular Alexa repo. I looked at the number of forks, the number of stars, seemed like a good choice. And it highlights some more advanced Alexa features such as dialogue management and entity resolution. And in many ways, dialogue management is similar to Bixby, at least conceptually, but very different in how you develop it. It calls an API. I think this is a very common pattern that you see in voice applications. And finally, it's conversational, multi-turn. It's not overly complex, but not overly simple. Just that nice mix of just about right, complex enough so porting it over to Bixby will let you learn more about developing a Bixby capsule. Now, one question you might have is there definitely is an Alexa Conversations version of Pet Match. Why did I not port that over? Well, two reasons. One, as I'm recording this, Alexa Conversations is pretty darn new. And secondly, I don't think a lot of developers have experience with it. So going with the older Pet Match seemed like the better choice. So let's jump in and see how Pet Match works. We're going to run it on Alexa first. All right, so we're over here in Alexa Developer Console, and I'm going to go ahead and run my skill.
Welcome to Pet Match. I can help you find the best dog for you. What are two things you are looking for in a dog?
I want a large dog.
Would you prefer a dog to hang out with kids or to protect you?
Kid-friendly dog.
Do you prefer high energy or low energy dogs?
Low energy.
So a large family low energy dog sounds good for you. Consider a Great Dane.
All right. Now, it recommended a Great Dane. Now, if I ask it something silly, like I want a unicorn.
Ah yes, unicorns are splendid creatures, but unfortunately owning one as a pet is outlawed.
There's a sense of humor. All right, let's see the exact same thing over with Bixby. Okay, so I'm in the Bixby Developer Studio, And this is the Bixby simulator, which lets you simulate Bixby on a device. In this case, we're simulating Bixby on a phone. So let's start this up.
Welcome to Pet Match. I can help you find the best dog for you. Tell me, what are 2 things you are looking for in a dog?
I want a large dog.
Would you prefer a dog to hang out with kids or to protect you?
Kid-friendly dog.
Do you prefer high energy or low energy dogs?
Low energy.
So a large family low energy dog sounds good for you. Consider a Great Dane.
All right, so same recommendation, same functionality. All right, let's just hit reset here in Bixby and say I want a unicorn.
I'm sorry, I can't match you with a unicorn.
Voila. So same thing. That's actually some variable text that's returned on the Alexa and on the Bixby side. Can't match you with a unicorn. All right, so let's get back to our presentation. So one thing you're going to notice as we go through Bixby and Alexa is they're very different development styles. Alexa is quite imperative. And what I mean by imperative, it's code-driven. You write an awful lot of code to get what you want to have done. You essentially describe in your code how to do something. Bixby, on the other hand, is very much a declarative framework, a very opinionated framework, which means it's model-driven. So you write a small fraction of the code, but you write far more models. You're really telling your application what to do versus how to do. I will say that when you look at Alexa's dialogue management and the new conversations that just rolled out, they're much more declarative in nature. But this is something to keep in mind, and you're going to see several examples of this. All right, these are the components of a Bixby capsule. I'm not going to walk through each of these in detail. We're going to run through them quickly based upon the demo you just saw, and then I'm going to compare and contrast them to the Alexa equivalents. So you saw I said I want a large dog, so I had to train Bixby for that, and it picked up large, which is a concept, which Alexa would call a slot, and then there was an action, which Alexa would call an intent, which is pet match. Then there was an endpoint that pointed to the code that actually had the logic, in this case an API call to go find a dog, and then output a Great Dane, which to Bixby is called a concept as well, and then it spoke and said, hey, a Great Dane is your recommended dog, and that was the dialogue or the voice. I did not have a UI here, but Bixby calls their UI a view. So these are all the components of a Bixby application. Let's go deep dive into what an Alexa skill and a Bixby capsule and compare and contrast and see where there's equivalence and where there's differences. Okay, the pet match basics. So pet match has 3 primary slots or concepts, which is the equivalent of slots for Bixby. The dog size, the dog temperament, and the dog energy. Now in this skill, there's additional slots. There's a pet slot, which automatically gets filled with dog. And there's some things I want type, article type, at the type. They're kind of helping Alexa with some of the natural language understanding. I did not need to create these for Bixby. Bixby's NLU did not require me to do so. And then there's several other slots in there, concepts, comparison type, amount, unit types, really not used. I'm not quite sure why they're in the original Alexa skill, but I think it's used. I think it's in there to show you how you can use Alexa dialogue management for a slot, but actually not use a slot in your actual business logic. Intents and actions, that's the equivalent. Pet match is an intent or an action that goes and finds the dog using those 3 slots, size, temperament, and energy. There's a help action that provides help. On Alexa only, there's a cancel and stop action. So Bixby doesn't have the equivalent. So not a hook when the user says cancel or stop, but it does definitely work. And there's a fallback action in Alexa. Bixby does not have the equivalent. I actually like this a lot about Alexa. There's some more interesting things you can do there. Bixby would just reprompt you if it didn't understand. And then in Bixby only, there's an intro action. And this is how it says that beginning intro text That's something you need to build into Bixby to have it say something at the beginning. We started talking about the slots and the concepts. With Alexa, if you're an Alexa developer, you know this very well. There's a single interaction model JSON file. For instance, en.usjson for a US skill, etc. And that's where you define all of your slots. With Bixby, however, your concepts are defined in separate files. So here in the left bottom of the screen, you see amount, animal, comparison, dog breed, the dummy text, forget that, energy, location. Those are all those Bixby concepts which map to an Alexa slot. They're just in separate files. And then synonyms. For Alexa, a synonym is directly put into that interaction model JSON file. In Bixby, we have files called vocab files that define synonyms. So this is a difference. All right, let's jump in there a little bit and take a look at this. We're taking a look at the temperament type slot on Alexa. And on the left side of the screen, you can see there's a temperament type, 3 possible values, watch, guard, family, and then you have some synonyms in there. And then at the bottom of the screen, you're saying, hey, I have a slot temperament of type temperament type, and I'm going to use that in my sample phrases. Look over on the right side. This is the Bixby equivalent. It's concepts. I have a temperament enumeration with the possibilities watch, family, and guard. And then below that is my vocabulary for temperament. Remember, that's the equivalent of Alexa synonyms. So watch, example, family, family, kid, kids, family, friends, guard, guard, protective, etc. There were some synonyms in Alexa that I did not need to use for Bixby because of the NLU differences. Pro tip, if you're using Bixby and want to reuse concepts, that'd be the equivalent of creating a slot type and then creating 2 slots based upon that single slot type. Then you'd use something called roll of. Or if you wanted to create a base concept and extends, you can extend a concept. Just a deeper dive and a reminder of the equivalencies. Alexa values, the Bixby equivalent is an enum. Alexa has a value, in this case watch, you can see in the bottom side of the screen. Bixby symbol, you can see there's a symbol watch on the right side. And then the synonyms in Alexa, right there, adult, barks at people. The synonyms on the right side for Bixby, adult, barks at people, not necessary for Bixby. What about built-in slots and concepts? So I have an example here. There is a slot defined but not really used in this skill and capsule called amount. So that's type Amazon number. In the Bixby side, on the right-hand side, it is a concept of type integer, so those are equivalent. One thing I will say is Bixby doesn't have all those rich list types, those named entities that Alexa has. I think that's great that Alexa has them. If you're doing something like that with Bixby, you need to create your own. However, you should always check those Bixby library capsules because they provide some equivalence, some different functionality, and sometimes enhanced functionality over what might be an Alexa built-in slot. Examples, Viv Time, Viv Money, Viv Geo, and that goes right to my pro tip. You definitely want to become familiar with the Bixby library capsules. The library capsules are a bunch of pre-written code that make things easier and faster for you to develop. So, jumping into Bixby development, take a look at the library capsules and see if they can help you. Intents on Alexa side are called actions on Bixby. So, Alexa intents. So you define the intent, the metadata, and the sample phrases stored in that single interaction file, e.g. that enusjson is used for US skills. But all the behavior of that intent is in your Node.js code, all right? I will say that dialog management has some behavior in our interaction model file. We're going to take a look at that in a second. Bixby, on the other hand, guess what? Just like slots versus concepts, actions, there's a separate file for each action. So over there on the right, there's a help, intro, and match pet action. And action definition and metadata plus some basic, I'll call it housekeeping behavior, is defined within the model. The NLU training, what Alexa calls samples, are stored in entirely separate training files. Let's take a deeper dive into that. Okay, here's an Alexa intent. On the left-hand side, it's a pet match intent. It goes over the slots that I could use, and then it goes over example phrases. Very typical Alexa stuff that you do in that JSON file. Because this is using dialogue management, there's some more in there. So on the right-hand side are some things that are added. All right, on the Bixby side, a Bixby action is defined in individual files. Let's take a look at that on the left-hand side, just a code snippet. And these are identifying the concepts like energy, which is required input, and then a couple of optional inputs there. On the right-hand side, this is interesting, you'll see this is the very top of the file. And look, there's an input that's an animal, okay? And there's the default init that just sets a default value. But then look down there at that validate, all right? So this is actually doing a validation of that input right there in the action. Let's jump in and take a deeper look at how that compares to how Alexa does it. What this really is slot validation. Let's take a look at how this works. On the Alexa side, validation is done in code, all right? I have a slot that is Amazon animal, and I have some synonyms in there, unicorn, chimera, and dragon. And right over to the right, there's a bunch of entity resolution code really saying, is what was filled in that slot one of those synonyms? And then some invalid responses are there, and it randomly selects one and outputs it. Okay, on the Bixby side, doing the exact same thing, but here you're doing it in the action. See, if you look down there, there's a validate, and if regex, a little regex expression, it's a unicorn, chimera, or dragon, choose a random phrase and present that back to the user. So this is a great example of code-heavy versus model-driven development. Pro tip for you. Become familiar with the Bixby expression language. That's that if down there in the validate. It's super powerful. It can be confusing at first, but once you get used to it, it's really the key to unlocking building simpler and more effective and faster code. Let's look at error handling on the two platforms. On the left-hand side, here's how Alexa handles error. It's in the code. All right, so it's creating a phrase to tell the user that there's been an error. Bixby, guess what? Does it in the action, or mostly in action. There's a little snippet of JavaScript at the top where it's throwing an error, but on the bottom, it's outputting a dog breed. But if there's an API error, there's a message shown to the user, or if it's empty, in other words, null is returned, then there's a message shown to the user. So, model-driven, code-driven. All right, training, or samples as Alexa calls it. Really, really different between those two platforms. Alexa, you put it in your slot definition. I have a sample snippet of code from that JSON file from the Alexa skill. Bixby on the right-hand side, here's some training that's been entered. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the Bixby training. So the Bixby training you enter through the Bixby Developer Studio IDE. So I want a small family dog, and each of those has been annotated. So look at those annotations on the right. Small is size, family is temperament, dog is an animal. And on the bottom is the planner that actually shows you how the NLU engine is going to understand it the way you have it annotated. One tip for you. When you're going to train a Bixby capsule, do not overtrain it and provide too many examples. That actually negatively impacts the NLU engine. You need just enough training. So I'd say start lean, see what works, incrementally add some training, and test. But just enough training is the perfect amount of training for Bixby. So what about the output we give back to the user? On the Alexa side, if you're using dialogue management, some of the output can be in your JSON file, but more commonly is in the bottom left-hand corner, you see actual code written that actually creates some text that's then turned into speech and returned to the user. So on the Bixby side, there's two ways of doing it. You can put it in a view or a separate dialog file. A view is where you define a Bixby UI, but you can also define the dialog that you send back to the user. So look in the top right. This is when it asks the user for the size, message, choose a random one. Here's the two random utterances that can come from Bixby. And then on the bottom right side, there's a pure dialog file. So just dialog there. Now I'd say with Bixby development, typically you almost always have a UI. Matter of fact, it's often required. So just using message in a view works really well. But sometimes you want separate dialog files. There's some more complicated things you can do there. So just so you know, there's two ways of doing it. So in the sample GitHub code, I use both. So for all the prompts to the user, the questions to the user, it uses a dialog in a message in a view, but the actual result when it tells you what breed is for you is in a separate dialog file. Endpoint and endpoints. Wow, almost the exact same terminology. Little bit different, but in Alexa, an endpoint, you're defining and saying, hey, here is my Lambda function that will match up with my model that I've created. On the Bixby side, same thing, there's an endpoints file. So for the action match pet, these are the accepted inputs, and it's going to go to matchpet.js. One thing that's different with Bixby is a Bixby capsule is developed all together. So not only all of your modeling, but your actually code is all developed in the Bixby Developer Studio. So it's not bifurcated between, hey, some things I do in Lambda, some things I do in Developer Console, and then I combine them with this endpoint. In Bixby, yes, there's an endpoint, but it's pointing to a file that's sitting right there in the same IDE. So let's talk about the actual code. And here is where there is a very dramatic difference between the two platforms. So PetMatch is actually 402 lines of code, and Bixby is 37 lines of code. Okay, wow. Why is it so different? As I told you, Alexa is imperative. See, if you look at the actual code, there's an awful lot of housekeeping code here. Actually, let's just jump over there and take a look at it. All right, so here I am. Here is the Alexa code, and as I take a look at this, all right, there's a bunch of entity resolution code there. There's all these handlers with can I handle this? And then a ton more entity resolution code, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have here is you have a bunch of boilerplate code there. That's definitely a very imperative approach. Now, let's jump over and take a look at the Bixby code. So that is a simulator. But let's go to the studio and code match pet.js. Okay, that's the whole code. Really, all this code is doing is making that API call. Everything else that the capsule does and all that other behavior is defined in the model. It's a very declarative approach. Really, really a massive difference between the two platforms is the amount of traditional code you have to write. And I have to tell you, I came to Bixby after developing for Alexa, and I was very used to, well, just let me write a bunch of code for it. And went over to Bixby, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. There's very little code, but it's doing all these things, but there's all these files. So there's definitely a mental shift in your thinking around, hey, I model all these things. Most of it works together, and then the code is this small chunk of business logic that I can't actually model. Very, very different approach. All right, let's jump back to our presentation. Metadata, absolutely critical for a skill or a capsule. So Alexa, in an interaction JSON, that's where you have your invocation name, Roger's pet match, I called it. And then you have a skill.json with all that metadata that primarily drives the Alexa skill store. On the Bixby side, very much the equivalent, but really spread into 3 different files. Capsuleinfo.bxb has most of the metadata. capsule.bxb, some technical configuration, importing library capsules, etc. in there. And then there's a hints.bxb, which the equivalent of a hint is an example phrase for Alexa. So that's the metadata. Let's talk about UI. There is no real UI in PetMatch, but just to compare and contrast the two platforms, on the Alexa side, most people have migrated over to using APL now. Some of them are verbose, but extremely powerful markup language that lets you do some really cool stuff. On the Bixby side, it uses Bixby views. These are somewhat simpler than APL, but I will say they are more limited. There's not the animation or some of those capabilities there, but those are the two equivalents. That's outside the scope of this discussion, diving in deep, but understand they're equivalent, but work very differently, and you're just gonna have to understand how to create a Bixby view. In the documentation, one cool feature is you can actually play with some of the attributes and it'll actually dynamically generate the code, and then you can cut and paste that into your Bixby view. The development environment. This is something really different between the two platforms as well. So Alexa, you're probably setting up what modeling you do in that developer console. In other words, your slots, your intents, your example phrases, and then using something like Visual Studio Code or one of the online code editors that Alexa offers or Amazon offers to actually write your Node.js code. And if you're doing things locally, using Ask CLI to remotely sync, and some other functionalities to manage some capabilities in your Alexa skill. On the Bixby side, you do everything in a single IDE, the Bixby Developer Studio. So that means you develop not only your JavaScript code, but all that modeling I showed you in that studio. There's a simulator that simulates the various Bixby devices. There's a test functionality, which are called stories. I'm not going in those today, but super powerful way that you can write functional tests, including a UI, have it run, rerun it. I highly suggest you check out stories for anything complicated you're building. And finally, there's a debugger. So while you're using that simulator, you can see exactly what input Bixby is getting, what it's expecting, etc. Obviously, you can still console log as you do traditionally, but the debugger is quite powerful and you can get a lot of information without actually needing to go into your code and add logging statements. Here is a summary. This is a high-level summary. And really what I'm trying to do here is to say, hey, two different platforms, they're calling things different names, but they're the same thing or very similar in their functionality. As you saw in this presentation, there's a lot of nuances here. I'm not going to go over this, but I am going to make this deck available with the video so you can take a look at this to refresh your memory or just give someone a high-level summary. So now you've seen how I ported Alexa's PetMatch skill over to Bixby Capsule, and I've highlighted the differences between the two platforms. The primary big difference is on that code side. As you saw, over 400 lines of code, 37 lines of code. But over here on the Bixby side, a lot more modeling. That really is kind of the adjustment that you need to make if you're an Alexa developer moving over to Bixby. You need to embrace modeling and understand the modeling and realize the amount of traditional code you're going to write is far, far less. I do want to make a call to action. So I think the voice industry has built some really amazing things, but we've been kind of limited by thinking about the smart speaker. So, clearly because I work for Samsung, I think about other devices like phones, TVs, appliances, and watches that have a voice assistant in them. But I also will say that Amazon has done some amazing things about bringing Alexa to additional devices. So a general call to the industry is let's stop being constrained by thinking about what we can build for a smart speaker. Let's build voice experiences for all these new incredible devices that are coming out. Some Bixby developer resources. Bixby Developers, that is your homepage for everything Bixby. Our GitHub presence. We have a YouTube channel, pretty active there. We have a podcast. Every couple weeks, I release a new episode, often talking with an experienced developer or designer in the voice industry. Follow us on Twitter at Bixby Developers. Great way to stay in touch and understand new and improved things that we do to the platform. And then we throw out a bunch of tutorials as well there, or follow us on Facebook. All right, so that is how you port an Alexa skill over to Bixby Capsule. Go over to the GitHub. You can download the two of them, compare and contrast, and let me know how it all works out. Love to keep in touch. Once again, my name's Roger Kibbe. At Roger Kibbe is my Twitter handle. I'm super excited to see what you build with Bixby. Good luck. Have some fun. Take it easy. Goodbye.
Okay, yeah, we're muted, so now I think we're unmuted.
All right, I think we're
Yeah.
we're live. So I was trying to. You guys are asking some good questions.
Yep. A lot of questions. A couple
As
questions.
we went, I answered a bunch of, but I started queuing them up. So I'm going
Yeah.
to try these and answer this. So one early question I didn't answer was, how can you monetize your capsules? Yeah, so we haven't rolled out, haven't yet. I will say that. The monetization, like where you can sell a subscription or in-skill purchasing equivalent. You definitely can sell things. You can use Samsung Pay within a capsule and integrate it that way. But if you want that in-capsule monetization, then I'd say stay tuned. Some things are coming. Then there was a question about platforms Bixby is on. So Bixby is on Samsung devices. So primarily right now on smartphones. So all the modern smartphones, the S8 series and above, are Bixby enabled. And then also on smartwatches, which we have just rolled out the ability to develop for. So you now can develop and release something for a smartwatch. A little bit more limited than what you can do with a full-blown Bixby client in the phone, and that's in the docks. And then we have essentially an early release of capabilities for smart refrigerators. So there's Samsung refrigerators that have a giant screen. You can build Bixby capsules there. You can build that for them right now, but that isn't fully fleshed out. So it's more of an experimental release. And then very soon we're rolling out the Samsung TVs. So it's really hundreds of millions of devices that ship every year.
So another question that we missed was how long is the review time typically? I'd say it's about 3 days plus or minus 1 or 2 days for most capsules. And yeah, now I guess we'll just go through the chat. So
okay, how to send audio files to users? Somebody asked that. So there's two different ways. You can embed it in SSML, and then there's a functionality. So I mentioned library capsules, so called audio player. So that would be for long form audio. So, for instance, if you were creating a podcast capsule or something else of long form audio, then you'd want to use the audio player library capsule, and that lets you put essentially a playlist of MP3s in there and then have them play consecutively there and control that. There's that question about the marketplace in Europe. So we do not have a marketplace yet in Europe. I would like to say we do, but stay tuned. Hopefully very soon. Why is a dispatch name required? So, I mean, Bixby works the same way as Alexa and Google in that you invoke things via dispatch name, but we also have something called NL categories, which is pretty unique. So brief example of how this works, takes the Big Sky capsule. So you may be familiar with Big Sky because it's also an Alexa, quite popular weather capsule. They've subscribed to the weather NL category, which on Bixby means if I'm a Bixby user and I enable Big Sky and go ask for the weather, it'll ask me, what do I want my preferred capsule to be? And if I ask, say, Big Sky, from then on, when I say, what's the weather, Big Sky will answer it. So that's a way Bixby supports making requests to a capsule and directly having your third-party capsule answer that request. So you can become the default for a question through natural language categories. I have a lot of questions. I'm bopping through here. Somebody asked about Alexa conversations in Bixby and the similarity. So I just started reading up on Alexa conversations. I will say that I recognized a lot in there. So it felt very similar, but I'm sure there's some differences. But yeah, I'd say the same philosophical mindset is behind Alexa conversations and the way Bixby does some of its modeling. I'll leave it at that.
But to kind of address like the other part of his question is, in terms of making Bixby a breeze, if you want to learn Bixby, there's plenty of resources to start learning Bixby, like to start with, without having to learn Alexa conversations first, right? So like if you check out our YouTube, we have Hello World tutorials that explain, and they're code alongs as well, so they explain exactly how to build your first Bixby capsule without having to learn Alexa conversations first.
There was a question about modeling. I thought this was a really good question, saying, hey, can I pull data directly from a database in a model? No. So if you wanted to actually interface with the database, you'd actually need to create some JavaScript code and interact and call that API for that database, and then you'd return those results directly in the model. But I love the thinking around hey, is there a model-driven way where the model could understand the schema of the database and then expose it? Great idea. I'll leave it with a wink. And then there was a question about what SSML tags are supported. So I think pretty much everything, every common tag but prosody is supported. I have to go look in the docs and remember, and I think prosody is coming very, very soon. But if you look in the Bixby developers and look in the docs, you can see all the SSML tags that are supported there. If we have some time, I'll bring that up. What else do we have? Oh, okay, Jonathan, you can bring that up while I'm looking for more questions. Please make great info. We can't hear you. Now it's okay. Okay. What about account linking support? Yeah, so Bixby supports OAuth. So you can definitely, that's the way how you create account linking. Matter of fact, there's several skills that do that. So you'd go in and when typically, just like you do with Alexa or Google, first time you use it, right, you need to go log in. And then that account link would be set up. So really, really similar.
Also to know about account linking is that if you're talking about from like the end user developer, from the end user, the customer, some of the account information is provided in a variable called viv context. You can get like their Bixby user ID if that's what you're looking for from like the developer, or from the developer end.
So Stuart, how I missed this? Can you recap how the code reduces from 400 lines to 37? Well, that was my whole presentation, but essentially Bixby is really model driven. So a lot of what you'd see in Alexa in your Node.js code, right, is actually done in the Bixby models. And then Bixby actually has something called dynamic program generation, where it creates some of that boilerplate code for you without you needing to worry about. So it's really quite different way of programming and developing. That is a long answer to that. We'll have this video up there. You can take a look. But it's annotating models instead of writing Node.js code is the quick and simple answer I would give you. When will on-device testing be able on smartwatches and TVs? Well, smartwatches very soon. And then the next thing would be on smart fridges, and I don't know about TVs. So stay tuned. Developer awards. So if you're talking about paying people, like Alexa does, and I don't believe Google does, we don't do that directly. We've had various contests and are considering running some more. During the review for submitted capsules, how detailed are the explanations of why it wasn't approved? Okay, that's a great question. So one thing we take pride on is providing really detailed feedback on reviews, not to take away, and they have a bigger volume problem, but I do develop for Alexa as well. And some of the challenges, frustrations I've had at periods has been, I got this reject and there's no reason why, or I couldn't figure out why. So we try to really give you some detailed feedback around exactly if you got rejected, why. The other thing we will often do is say, hey, we're approving this, but we noticed a couple things that we thought could be improved or could make the user experience even better. Chip asks, are there multiple ways to start a capsule? Start, open, ask. Yes, there are. That is in reserved utterances. But hey, Jonathan, why don't you show that SSML page while you got it up, and I'll get back to Chip's question.
Yeah, the SSML right here.
SSML page. You got it right there.
It's been up. Yeah, we can
do
reserved utterances.
Yeah, so search reserved utterances.
Yeah, it's right there. So then you click on English, and these are pretty much most of them.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways, and then below that is the
default actions. Yeah,
default action one. So that's why you could say start, talk to, speak to, load, ask. So pretty similar. I can't remember with Alexa and Google all the options there.
Right.
But I think we're in pretty close parity with them.
Yeah. So is Samsung planning to launch Bixby Marketplace in new countries? Yes, there's a plan for that. In terms of which countries, unfortunately, I'm not sure which ones are coming next. So
in terms of indication, is these are going to get the Bixby app or can do no, yeah. So you can launch Bixby. Well, you can do it from the app, but you can launch it two ways. One, you can say hi Bixby, right? So just wake word enablement. And then the love it or hate it Bixby button launches Bixby as well. So you can do it on a Samsung device, either with Hi Bixby enabled or via the Bixby button. SML voice tag to change voices. Yeah, we sure do. And Jonathan's got that right now, actually.
Yes. So you can just follow this code snippet here, and it'll change, the voice accordingly.
Yeah, so search for Bixby voices in the documentation.
SSML.
SSML documentation, and then there's a way, and absolutely you can change voices and do that. I really like that. I think it makes adds a lot of character to a lot of voice experiences.
Yes.
There will be better for a Google Assistant ported in Bixby. Boy, you guys are relentless.
At this rate, yes, right? I mean, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I'd love to do that. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Can you build a concept slot dynamically at runtime, like dynamic entities in Bixby, in Alexa?
No, I would say no to that right now. But I mean, you can make, I don't know, really generalized concepts that kind of catch anything, and then you could do whatever you want with that in the JavaScript, right? So that's one way to approach that. But I would say not in the way that the question's asking.
Yeah, my Alexa is too rusty to remember dynamic entities. You can have a slot. It's quite easy that takes any input.
Yeah.
And then you can process that input there. I don't know. Let me take a look at dynamic entities and get my head wrapped around what they do again. Maybe there's a better answer, but I'm not going to be able to answer that right now.
Are Bixby user IDs persistent across different capsules? Yes. They're linked to the Samsung account that the user has logged in with, and they're accessible through the Viv context variable. Okay.
Okay. We need a smart speaker. I've already said I can't talk about unshipping devices. Tell us, is there equivalent of quick links for Bixby, and can you see usage shots anywhere without having to spin something up for yourself? Okay. So quick links, not yet.
We were working on a badges program that a couple developers had beta access to, right?
Yeah. So it's in progress. Let's leave it. That's why I'm hedging on that answer.
Right.
And yeah, we do have stats, pretty darn basic. I don't think they're as good. So I think Alexa's got pretty good stats right now. They start out pretty basic. We do have stats in the developer. So if you submit a capsule, you get stats, but they're not as good as they should be. And people end up using some third-party solutions for that.
Interacting with other apps on your phone. So Right now, developers have access to deep links where they can dispatch, kind of a top level action to an individual application or an app on the phone. But that's the extent of it right
Yeah,
now.
if there's an Android deep link, then
Yeah.
absolutely you can go and do that and interact with an app. But I mean, those deep links tend to start something, and then the control is taken over by the app. So it's a one-shot invocation. It's not back and forth
Right.
with an actual application.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions about foreign language. Yes, working on it, but not yet.
Yes. And what is the recommended way to promote Bixby capsules when there is no direct link? So yes, that kind of ties back to the Bixby badges that we were working on, and there's still a work in progress to be able to provide a direct link to a capsule. Right now, I think people just promote them, I don't know, through whatever.
Yeah, well, you can tell them what
marketing.
to do on a Bixby enabled phone.
Right.
But you're spot on in saying, if you're saying that's a hole in the platform, we completely and 100% agree.
Yes.
So some work to be done.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on hello, Armel? Any thoughts on notifications to help engagement? Yeah, absolutely. Notifications are on the roadmap. I wish I had a better answer for you, but thanks. Good question. I know why you want notifications, Armel.
And Chinadu, welcome. Yes, I think I met you a few times at various events, like I believe you were there at SDC. But yes, great to see you here. And we caught up to the chat. We did it, Roger.
All right, we caught up.
Yes.
Perfect. You guys asked a lot of questions. Bixby on an iPhone. Here you guys go. Good. Overwhelm me. Bixby on an iPhone. I'd say that sounds like an interesting idea. And I'm
an interesting idea, yes. And
you also need to be enabled. Like, are they available automatically? Yeah. So we just rolled out voice enablement. So if you ask for a capsule and it's not enabled, then it will automatically enable it and tell you. That is there are. I know too much. There's a couple of bugs with that, which will get fixed soon. But that would be more like Google. If you ask for something and it's not enabled, it's automatically enabled. And I think Alexa has started to do that. If I'm not incorrect, but I can't keep track with what everything's going.
Yeah. Tell you what, I'll even give a quick live demo here. So we have this.
Okay.
Right. So here it says copycat's not added. Right. So if I do ask copycat to say hello, and it will add copycat for you, and then run that command. So yeah, it's called friction-free capsule enablement, quite the mouthful, and it will basically add a capsule based on the dispatch name immediately for you. So yeah, that's a very quick way to add a capsule nowadays.
Simon, hey Simon, how are you? You always ask great questions. What about SDC this year? Maybe online. I think SDC is canceled this year.
Yeah.
But we're working on some Bixby specific content online. Stay tuned there. Armel, is Bixby being tested outside the US? Yes, it is. That's the same international question. Stay tuned.
And is the user's email always provided?
So there's permissions. So if you want to get sensitive information, like the user's location or their email or their contacts, then you need to make requests for those permissions. And then the way it works is when the user first uses the capsule, a couple screens come up and ask you, hey, do you want to allow, for instance, a weather capsule needs location, right? So do you want to allow this capsule to get your location? Or in the case of an email, what is that? Personal information or profile? Anyway, I can't remember what it's exactly called. Profile. Do you want to allow that user access the profile? And it would do that. So any sensitive information requires you to ask for permissions, set that up in your capsule, and then when the user uses the capsule, it'll ask the user for that. If what to show a list in Bixby, is there a limit how long this list can be? You mean a list on the UI, Simon, or a table?
Now, I haven't run into that theoretical limit, but I believe at a certain point it becomes lazy loaded. So you could try and let us know if you find if you find the limit. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty big, although it would slow things. I mean, that's a lot of network traffic, so
Yeah.
it might be a little slower rendering. But I don't know. I don't know. There may be a limit,
There
but
may
we
be a
don't know.
theoretical limit, but we don't know it. So
65,000 rows. I'll go with that. Okay, so internationalization, like I said, I can't announce anything there, but got it. There's a lot of energy and excitement and desire there. So
yeah.
we've definitely heard that, and I would love to be able to tell you something soon about that. If the user does not provide permission for sensitive information, capsule stuff, yes, it can.
Yes, it can. Yes.
Yep. So you can actually query and see what permissions were given.
Mhm.
And then if it's not, then appropriately, like if I didn't provide location information, well, it'd be hard. If I was a weather capsule, I guess I'd have to prompt you, right? For where are you asking for the weather? So, which wouldn't seem like an ideal user experience, but you definitely can query and ask for that.
Yes. So, okay. One thing I wanted to point out, did anyone spot the inconsistencies with Roger's video? I spotted one mistake. And it was when he said chimera. I'm pretty sure it's a chimera.
Oh, well, I mispronounced things. Bonus points.
It's a horrible mistake. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Jonathan, this is right up your alley. What are the capabilities of the view?
I mean, the capabilities of the view, they're built with Bixby views, and they're limited to Bixby views. And I would just you'll have to stick with the various view capabilities in Bixby Studio, and there's some benefits and cons to that. The benefits is that it's very responsive across like all the different devices, right? So generally, you build a view for mobile, it'll look pretty good on watch, and it'll look great on TV and fridge as well. But no HTML, and in terms of no APL, and in terms of templates, I mean, Bixby Views is kind of a template, right? So
yeah, well, it's going to templates, pretty sophisticated templates. Yeah, compare and contrast with APL. APL is pretty. I'm actually I'll be first to give credit to Alexa for what they've done with APL. It's pretty sophisticated. Mm-hmm. You write a shit ton of code for APL, but you can do some really cool stuff. So I like what they've done. Yeah. I think you can do a lot of UIs that are similar. What we don't have yet is the animation capabilities of APL, and I think those are really cool. So I'm going to give kudos to Alexa for how fast and far what they've done with APL. And I know Google is going down the HTML route.
Right. So obviously HTML is super flexible, right? So you can do like kind of the world is your oyster with it.
That's an excellent question, Chip. Is code secure, also sensitive? Yeah. So there's a way to set up secrets, what we call secrets. So you'd go and do that online, and then your code itself would call it, but there's no way of looking at your code to get actually that information. So like an API key, etc. You can do that. Really similar conceptually to, and I'm forgetting how you do this with Alexa, so I'm sorry, guys, but I know you can do that online and set up these secret keys that are only available to at runtime and not in the code. So pretty similar concepts there. Is Bixby code secure? I think I got that. Is Bixby Reviews written in its own language? Yeah, so it's a BXB language, so it's markup. And yeah, so it is its own markup language. Yeah, that's the best I can say. I'm trying to figure out if there's an equivalent to it, and I can't think of anything that's quite like it. You just have to understand it. Actually, Jonathan, you're the expert in views.
Oh, sorry. What was
I'm not a UI guy.
Which question is Bixby Views
Oh,
written?
I said it's its own language. I was trying to think of anything that's equivalent to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would basically describe it as its own language, right? Because you have all your Bixby View markup keys and stuff like that. That's unique to Bixby Views, and it's not really used anywhere else. So, yeah, I would kind of give it that stamp of its own language thing. And to give you guys just like a quick example, this is like a Bixby View file where you have content section content, and you have different keys. It looks a lot like if you kind of think of it in structure to HTML, right? How HTML is like a lot of things nested inside of other stuff, right? So that's kind of how Bixby Views works. So yeah, it's basically its own language.
All right. Okay. So Chip, follow-on question. I guess your code's secure, tied to the developer account. Yeah. So it's tied to. So you'd create a Bixby developer account.
Mm-hmm.
You would go write a capsule. You define some secrets online. You'd be logged into that account.
Yes.
And then your capsule that you submit would have access to those secrets, if that makes sense. Jonathan's bringing it up.
Yes.
Right now, config and secrets.
You would go to this tab, you'd set your various API keys and stuff like that, and then the code itself is run on I believe our servers and stuff, so people can't really muck with it very much. But yeah, it's tied to developer account when it comes to your configs and secrets.
All right.
Okay. Well, we
need to do the. I think we're going to wrap up. We need to do. We have a little raffle. We need to ask. So those who signed up ahead of time are eligible. So let me get Bixby going. And there were. I'm in the spreadsheet. There were 86 of you. So I'm going to ask Bixby to give me numbers between 1 and 86. And that will be the 5 winners. And we'll send you an email and send you the swag. So give me a number between 1 and 86.
Running some quick calculations. Drum roll, please. Your number is 42.
42. Emil Thies. You're going to get some swag. Give me a number between 1 and 86.
1 second. Just double checking my math. All right. Looks like your number is 27.
27. Okay, I'm not going to pronounce this name right. Apoorv Lathi. You're getting some free swag. All right, 3 more. Give me a number between 1 and 86.
Running some quick calculations. Drum roll, please. Your number is 63.
63. Let's see who's 63. Amy Graff.
Woohoo!
You're going to get some free swag.
Congratulations.
Yay. Amy. All right, 2 more. Give me a number between 1 and 86.
1 second. Just double checking my math. All right. Looks like your number is 7.
7. Number 7. Somebody early register. Daphne Hicks or Dolphne Hicks. Yay, Bixby swag. Okay, 1 more. Give me a number between 1 and 86.
Running some quick calculations. Drum roll, please. Your number is 61.
61 is, I'm going to get to pronounce this name right. Giang Ing. You got the last set of Bixby swag.
Woohoo!
All right.
Congratulations.
If you have additional questions, we put those, you can go ahead and ask those on Twitter. Let's get up, actually. Let me share. Hang on.
Are you pulling up our Twitter?
Yeah, I was bringing PowerPoint. Here, you got it.
Yeah, I can go to our Twitter.
All right, I'll just stick this in the. So at Bixby Developers is a great place to do that. And then the two of us at Roger Kibbe and at John without. Tell me if I got this right, John.
Yeah.
Is that right?
John without the H.
John without the H. All right. Yeah. So go ahead and reach out and things. And we are going to be posting the presentation. And then I need some little bit of editing to that video. And we'll post that on. We're going to have a little more information in the video about the port. And then we also have the GitHub. So you can go look at the Alexa original version of Pet Match. And on GitHub, there is a direct port over, I mentioned, of Pet Match running on Bixby. So you can give that a try. And then I am actually going to create a more Bixby enhanced and add some Bixby features version of that. But I do not have that quite ready. So stay tuned for that next week. So best way you want to keep in contact with what we're doing, follow us on Twitter at Bixby Developers. So great, guys. Keep the questions coming. Follow us on Twitter. We do these office hours once a month. But we're always available on social media and happy to interact with you guys. And hopefully you found this valuable. So thank you so much for coming today.
Yes. Thank you, guys. I'll be ending the stream now. So bye.